What's up, familia? We are here to discuss the final issue of Jean Grey issue 4, and in order to do so, I had to bring in my fellow Jean Grey BFF, Scotty's son, back on the podcast.
Risen from the ashes, everyone. I have returned.
I have missed you so much. How are you?
I'm good. The feeling is very, very mutual. No, I thank you so much for having me back. I am so grateful.
I found the collab shirt we did the other day because we're moving some stuff from our Miami place to the New York place, and the Doug Ramsey you did, and then the Jean Grey shirt as well. You sent that to me like early on in our friendship, and those are going straight to New York so I can wear them. Are you wearing the Jean Grey one right now?
Well, I'm wearing one
that's the one
I made.
You sent me.
Oh
that
yeah,
one.
Well you have that. It's in blue.
Yeah.
I think you got the one in blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be talking about our God Queen, so I have to represent, of course.
Okay, listen, we can catch up another time. We have to dive into issue 4 because I have such crazy feels about it, and I want to know, where do you land on the series? Where do you land on this? Like, what are your general thoughts? Where are you at now?
I mean, it's Jean Grey, so of course. I mean, I'm all in, and I'm always the most biased when it comes to her. I mean, that's not a surprise to anyone that knows me. I mean, I've got, ups and downs, with it. I mean, is it a perfect series? No, it's not. I mean, there are some things that, especially with this recent issue, that kind of, had me kind of Scooby-Dooing with it. No, but I mean, overall, I mean, I found it to be a very solid miniseries, and honestly, just intrigued to see how this plays out in Mortal X-Men, which I do appreciate that, connectedness, because at first seeing her appear, and it's kind of funny, and I kind of question. So I can't remember the issue number. I think, what was it, like 15 or 14, or when you see Apocalypse with her in chain and with that feral Wolverine. But it's funny, and I was like, wait a minute, why is she dressed as Phoenix? And then the next one, she's back in her regular uniform again. It's like they never touch upon that.
I agree. So, I mean, listen, we are a generation of readers where the art was inconsistent from the end of one issue to the next. So I just figured editorial mishap, but I don't know if that was supposed to play into the story. I'm happy to see how Immortal X-Men goes, but I agree. Like, at the end of that issue of Immortal X-Men, there's Jean in chains in her Phoenix costume, and then she's in her default uniform in the next. But I don't also know how that works, because Jean's body is supposed to be a skeleton on, at the Hellfire Gala. So how does she have a body in the White Hot Room right now when her consciousness is also in the White Hot Room? I don't get it.
I mean, I guess she was there just waiting for herself to arrive.
Have you listened to our interview with Phoenix Force Creations? Mike has a theory that there's always a Jean Grey in the White Hot Room that's waiting for herself to arrive. And I chef's kiss.
No, I agree with that. And that's kind of where my thought was going, that this is just her, version of herself in the White Hot Room, possibly doing what she does when she ascends to that existence. I know that was always a big question, is what does she do when she dies and she ascends to the White Hot Room? What work does she accomplish, and what does she do to eventually bring herself back into the corporeal world, the land of the living once again? And I don't know, maybe this is kind of a bit of a facet of it, somewhat, kind of just going through different stages to figure out, okay, so this happened, I need to focus on maybe not doing it like this, and then yada yada. I kind of wish that we would get a series, if I'd be at a mini series where it focuses more on that aspect, Jean's journey traversing through the White Hot Room, and what does she do as the Phoenix? What does she burn away? What does she reset? It's so it's. I mean, you can go into another Jean saga, so to speak, with that. I mean, it's endless. But no, I mean, I completely agree with that theory, and I think that this is just the white hot Jean, occupying that space, and that her body is just the spirit, for if you will, waiting to be reborn.
I love this metaphysical conversation. This is why I love our God Queen so much. I want to pull on some of the threads you were talking about, because I agree with you. I love the idea of having a series where we follow Jean in the White Hot Room and sort of her duties and her responsibilities as a Phoenix of the White Crown. I was hoping that's what this series was going to be. And that's something I was talking to our friend on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, Jean Red Gray. And I think some of my frustrations with this series isn't that it's not well written, isn't so much this what if approach, or that there's no substance here that Louis Simonson has sort of planted for our God Queen. It's more of just like a disappointment that this was sort of a retelling of her origin and more of an earnest look at her feeling guilty at what happened at the Hellfire Gala, when I'm ready to see what was she doing in the White Hot Room at the end of Here Comes Tomorrow. Does she remember her time as White Phoenix? Why hasn't it been brought up that she pushed Scott to be with Emma? The Emma Frost and Scott Summers relationship works and has thrived because Jean knew she had to sacrifice her heart in order to save the universe. It's a beautiful story. So
no.
Why? I just want answers for it now. I don't need to see Jean rebonding with the Phoenix. I don't need to see Jean being like, oh, I feel guilty for what happened at the Hellfire Gala. I also don't understand, and maybe you can answer this for me, how this series is tackling that guilt. Because all the scenarios Jean has played out here, I don't see it in any way, shape, or form contributing to avoiding what happened at the Hellfire Gala, right? And I said this in issue 1. I think it should have been her thinking, okay, I'm going to let my teen self remember the present, so that way she can read Xavier, find out about Krakoa, and make herself stronger as a nation. I thought issue 2 was going to be about her being like, oh, I was focusing too much on my relationships with Logan and Scott. And I thought issue 3 would have been her thinking she should have trained Maddie stronger, so that way 2 Jean Greys on Krakoa is better than 1. But none of it. I don't understand any of it as to that main premise of why did she build all these other scenarios.
I think it plays up to that whole.
You're like, holy shit! I'll see you again in 2 years. Goodbye. You're like, goodbye.
No. But this is what I love about it, because these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves, and it's. I know they weren't trying to build this miniseries as this is not a Jean Grey what if, but yet it does kind of feel and fall into that category, so to speak. But I think it also just kind of goes down to the question or the theory that every decision that we don't make, we've created an alternate reality where we did make that decision, even though we don't see the result of it. But in Jean's case, she does, because she's now altering these events, if ever even so slightly, that's causing the events that happen in those respected issues. Like you said, talking about Teen Jean. Okay, well, let me not erase our memories and then get us prepared for this and that, and you see how well that went down. Same thing, what if she allowed Wolverine to pilot the shuttle? How'd that go? I mean, I guess the pro of that one was that she got to know him a little bit better.
But the 616 Jean knows him better. Right. In universe, Jean, this Jean knows Wolverine, is very intimate with Wolverine. So what was the and I thought that issue would have been interesting if we would have seen what makes these 3 work as a throuple, because it's been alluded to for such a long time that they're in a throuple. It's never really been confirmed in story, but the innuendos are certainly there.
Yeah.
Why do they work now as a throuple? I would have liked to have seen some of that. And again, I think Jean should have felt guilty. Like, man, my take would have been Jean is back to life. She just went through everything in X-Men Red. She's on Krakoa now. It's a mutant paradise. She can sigh. She can have fun with Cyclops and Wolverine. And she felt guilty for that because she wasn't training herself to be stronger. She wasn't training herself to be more prepared for something like Nimrod coming. That to me is like that. There's your story for why you feel guilty. So that's my main grievance with the series. It's just I wanted more answers to the Phoenix mythos. I don't see how the scenarios that Jean played out overall would have helped her avoid, the Krakoan massacre. That being said, though, I really did like this issue. I thought this issue, there was a lot of interesting little nuggets there. And one of them, to pull again on the thread that you were talking about, were these universes that Jean was creating. Like, Jean created these universe on her own,
Mhm.
presumably without the Phoenix present. She
Right.
created them.
Yep.
That is God Queen level. And again, we've theorized Louis Simonson is heavily inspired by Here Comes Tomorrow, with Jean being able to create and amputate timelines.
But then it's like, but then where was the? I mean, why wasn't that really kind of referenced upon a little bit? You know, because even go back to End Song, there was a reference to Here Comes Tomorrow where she's talking about the bug people. Right
Yeah.
before Wolverine's like, she's about to pop, you know,
The
everyone, and she referenced, you know, Here
little bug
Comes
people of
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah,
Right,
here I
right.
come tomorrow. Yes.
Um, let me go ahead and let's go back to the whole thruple thing real quick.
Go for it. Go for it.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not really kind of was never really big into that whole thing. I mean, unless you want to throw in Emma, then you have like, you know, a forple there, you know, whatnot.
Wait,
Okay, I
did you
think
watch Riverdale?
no.
Okay,
I
they call them the quad on
The
Riverdale. So
quad.
a
Oh,
quad.
okay.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go,
Sorry, you know, let's
go,
get the quad together, guys.
go.
um, no, okay. I think Jean is honestly a very kinky gal, and the reason why I say that is, and why I don't really, get on top, get on the thruple train there. It's like, I think that girl likes to watch. If you ever watched that, I mean, look, you got Scott Summers, you've got Wolverine. They've got this kind of intense, just man beef kind of not hatred, but this dislike that's so hot that eventually they're going to come together and they're going to create their own Phoenix Force, if you will, that's going to burn away everything and blah 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 and fire and passion and our sexuality is incarnate now and forever. If you ever watched the show Sense8,
I have not.
you go. Well, you should. It's good. But there's this character named Leto who is gay, but he's a closet gay character. Spoilers, if you haven't seen it. But he has a boyfriend named Hernando who is a professor at a college. But they have a friend named Danny, and so she gets off on watching them get busy. So that's kind of how I can see that kind of relationship. Like, okay, Scott, all right, Logan, you guys have at it. I'm just going to just stand here and not film.
But was it Morrison who said this? And I think they said this when they were writing New X-Men, that Jean was kinkier than Emma. And that's a really hard, that's such a hard thing for a lot of other Jean and Emma and X-Men readers to metabolize. But I think what Morrison was trying to allude to was that Emma is a character who is wearing those very provocative outfits because she's doing that on purpose. It's tactful to have men distract her so she could be doing, servicing her own agenda. And Emma, for all her flaws, though, has a lot of heart, is a very good, vanilla character. She just wants to be with Scott Summers. She wants to be in a monogamous relationship. Jean, however, is the one who wears a sexy corset at the Hellfire Gala, runs around, goes dark. Her more, she will consume an entire galaxy. And I really like that idea with that dichotomy of Jean and Emma, that people on the surface, you would think Emma's the kinkier one, but no, actually Jean is the kinkier one. So I don't disagree with that at all. And I don't disagree that maybe they're in a throuple because Jean wants Cyclops and Wolverine together, like I don't doubt that. But here's my thing. Why are we doing the work for the writers? This is where the Jean Grey series should have tackled that. No. This is where Hickman should have tackled that. I think I'm probably, it's because I'm going to be turning 40 in a couple of weeks, and I've been reading these books for 3 decades. I know you would never tell because I have a great dermatologist, but
no, as you do
you look, I mean, we've talked about that endlessly, how handsome and great you look, but
please.
But I don't understand why these issues aren't being tackled. And in 3 decades of being a reader, I don't want to piece together things in the background. I want you just tell me what you're trying to say in the story and let me decipher that, because all it does is end in very angry fights on message boards.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I wonder too, how much did editorial have a kind of play into the story too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm not a writer, so I can't speak on that. But I'm sure sometimes there's certain, maybe possibly interference that says, okay, well, we can do this, but don't do that. Don't, push this, or don't say this or say that, but let's go ahead and kind of maybe tease it here a little bit, and kind of throw a little bit of this in here and give it a little bit of a sprinkle and zest without
Yeah.
going, there all the way. No, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's just because honestly, we have seen these stories before. This isn't the first time where it's, kind of tackled, these what ifs, and I mean, um, we kind of saw a little bit of it in, Phoenix Resurrection, too. Is just like, and I mean, even, and as much as I, really like that series, because I mean, it brought, our girl back, it still left me with questions like, okay, so with how End Song ended, how does this, where did this story go?
Gene
How did
was
it
looking
get
for pieces. I
right?
did not make up
So
this story. This is published stories out there. Why don't they tackle it?
yeah,
Sorry.
and that's the thing. It's like, how did she get here from there? What happened in between?
Yeah.
It's just, and there's no mention. They don't even, bring it up about the last time they had this encounter, with her. And then it's just kind of like with this series. I mean, I they kind of, I mean, you do get a little bit of Phoenix Resurrection in here, especially with some of the panels with how it's drawn. And we can, talk about that, later. But it's just, yeah, the bigger picture is, it's it's so hard to really kind of surmise, not being in that position. But my thing is, maybe Louise Simonson just wasn't able to really tell the full story that she wanted to tell. Maybe kind of how Claremont,
I have
wanted.
I have no idea on that.
Yeah,
For
it's yeah.
for folks at home, Jean at the end of Phoenix End Song said she was going back into the White Hot Room to find all of her pieces. We know in
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix War Song there is a blink and you miss a cameo of our God Queen at her grave that's telling the cuckoos, "Not soon, yet we will be hatching." And then we know several pieces of the Phoenix start going missing from their hosts throughout the
Yeah.
utopian Messiah Complex era. The idea was that I think at the time editorial wanted to tie questions to Jean's return with Hope Summers. We all know how that sort of ended.
Mm-hmm.
But even in AVX, when it was firmly decided that Jean was not going to be Hope, or Hope was not Jean reborn, Jean appears to Cyclops in two instances, one in the AVX actual series, and then in the Uncanny X-Men AVX tie-in, where he goes to the White Hot Room and he hears a voice that tells him to tell Logan that she loves the name of the school. So when we get something like Phoenix Resurrection and X-Men Red, and we're told that Jean was just dead during this era, it's like, why can't we just tackle that already? Especially here in Louise
Right.
Simonson. And like, maybe I guess Jean is surrounded by all these different versions of herself, but I wish she would have called them pieces for sake of continuity. And I know Louise Simonson said that she was playing catch up reading when she was pitching the series. She was sort of going back and reading everything that's been published with Jean. So maybe she just did not have time to metabolize these stories. But
Could be.
I this is as close as a behind the scenes Jean in the White Hot Room that we're going to get. And we just know that Jean has done more in the White Hot Room. And so in that regard, it's what disappointed me. But the art, though, the art is gorgeous. And yes, there are
Oh
callbacks to
yeah.
Phoenix Resurrection. I mean, Bernard Chang, holy frack. I mean, this to me, it's like, if you're gonna buy this issue, if you're gonna the series and you're gonna have any qualms with it, that's fine. The one thing you can have a qualm with is the art. This art is, I mean, look at this. This is
Oh, I
gorgeous.
know. It is
Gorgeous.
absolutely breathtaking. I mean, just the vibrant colors and just the details, and I love with the emotion that he, draws on her face when, faced with these kind of bigger questions, and the end result, and then this confrontation that she kind of has, we'll just say, pieces of herself, that are confronting her really hardcore here. No, it was just, oh, the art was just absolutely amazing. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing other works that he does, hopefully within the X line.
So to pull on that thread of Phoenix Resurrection, Jean is holding the Phoenix in this issue, and she goes, "Why didn't you
Yeah.
come to me?" And the Phoenix is
Yes.
like, "Oh, I'm dead too, right here in the Nexus in the White Heart Room." When did Phoenix die? I was asking someone this. I think it was Jean Red Gray, because Phoenix was with Echo, and I know Echo has lost Phoenix. Someone mentioned that in comments, so I read the issue. I skimmed the issue very, very transparently. So I skimmed it, but I didn't take it that Phoenix died. Why is the Phoenix? I will take the word of the writer and editorial that Phoenix is dead, but for me, it was just curious that Phoenix was in there, especially since after AVX, Phoenix exploded across the globe and then was okay, like in the next panel. You know what I mean? Like, well, not the next panel, but a couple issues later, the Phoenix was fine.
Well, I think with this, and I kind of I have it pull up on my phone here too. That very scene that you're talking about. Obviously, with the mythology of the Phoenix, is that I mean, when it dies, it's always reborn, and I think that's kind of a bit of a play here. But if you think about it, though, when she says, "Well, why didn't you come to me?" and then it says, "How could I? I'm as dead now as you are." I What I took
Oh,
from that is this cements that they are truly one and the same. And just to kind of, phrase here or read here where it says, like you, I exist only here, a nexus between all Phoenix hosts and our eternal flame. This is the Phoenix Force talking. And it continues to say, I'm bits and pieces inactive. The white hot room is the heart of the Phoenix, and it is broken. Where did Jean get stabbed?
in her
Right
heart.
in her heart.
Oh,
And that
Ascani's
right
son.
there, and that is what I took from that when Moira went up from behind her and stabbed her in the back, through her chest, right into her heart. To me, that's what I took what the Phoenix is saying. Our heart is broken, and this is their time to come together to heal, be reborn from that. However, that's going to happen in the pages of Immortal X-Men.
I love that. I listen, this is why I love having conversations as a community, because it helps me see things that I don't see, because I'm just here like, where did Phoenix die? And it's like, no, by Louise Simonson's interpretation here, the Phoenix and Jean are one in the same. And I know
Right.
she has said in interview that is the Phoenix something that Jean created, um, or is it a separate being? And I think here it's a very compelling argument that she created the Phoenix. So I love that. The one thing I want to get your opinion on then, because this bothered me as well, was Madelyne, sort of saying, "Oh, I'm not real in this issue," but also that Madelyne is part of Jean's soul. I don't know how I feel about that, because I don't know if that's a byproduct of just the generation of writers that Louise Simonson finds herself in, that maybe clones are just never fully real. They're just a byproduct of the original. Because I feel the conversation we have now is that clones are very much their own individuals with their own souls. And I love that. But Madelyne is very present here within Jean's soul. I think it's a compelling argument here that Jean and Maddie are one and the same. And unfortunately, because of that, I can't argue for Nate and Maddie, but it's still very you're like, I'm done with you. You're like, I'm so done. Like, you have to stop. But I, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't. I do know I don't like that Maddie has the line, "I'm not real," or "I've never been real," or something like. I don't like that line by any means. But I'm okay with Jean and Maddie sharing a soul. I don't think I'm as turned off by that as I initially thought.
I think with that, where that line stems from is this is just the version of Madeline from the Inferno series, where she, at that time when it was revealed to her that she was a clone of Jean, that in her mind, well, I'm not a real girl because I'm just another version of somebody else. So I think this is just kind of an echo of that very sentiment, because clearly, and I look, I absolutely love Madelyne Pryor. I
I
always
love
rooted for
Maddie.
her, and I always thought she always just got really the shit end of the stick with everything. And it's because it's just she got dealt a bad hand with everything, and it's not her fault. It's not Jean's fault. I mean, I don't Cyclops. I mean, the common denominator with all that was Sinister. He's the one
I
that really,
agree. That is what I love you so much. I agree. I'm sorry to interrupt you because I agree. I think Cyclops was being stalked by Sinister as a kid. He was
yeah,
being manipulated. Sinister created a clone just to breed with Cyclops. And
right. That's no.
Madelyne is now traumatized. Jean had her genetic samples taken away from her without any consent. So the common denominator here is Sinister, who fucked all these
Oh
people
yeah.
up and manipulated them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if anything, if anyone should be getting vengeance upon them, it should be him. And that's why I'm always like, why was he even on Krakoa at all? Part of the Quiet Council when especially when you have Jean and there, and Cyclops being one of the war captains, being a presence, among there. It's just I never really understood. I mean, I know Sinister has his fan base, and I'm going to be honest, I do miss Sinister, Mister Sinister. That very kind of scary and very. But I mean, teach their own. That's neither here or there. But back to Madelyne, I just think that was just really an echo version of her time when she became the Goblin Queen during the Inferno era,
That's
because
fair. That's fair.
at the end of the day, yes, I mean, I agree. I mean, Madelyne is her own person. I mean, she is really shining now in the Dark X-Men series, and I hope that it continues to do so, because she needs to get away from this trope of I can't stand Jean, I can't stand Cyclops,
Agreed.
death
Agreed.
to them both, and it's an old, it's tired story. It's played out. I'm glad that at least with Dark Web we had that reconciliation, if you will, between both Jean and Madelyne,
Agreed.
and I would love to actually have at least some point where you have Jean and Madelyne together again, and someone says to them, "Are you two sisters?" And then Jean looks at her and says, "Yes, we are."
I would
And
love
because
that
I mean that
too.
eventually, because if you think about it, I mean, yeah, they really are. They're I mean, yes, Madelyne Pryor is a clone. She is genetically another Jean Grey with a different name, but she has metamorphed herself into her own person. She's always been her own person. She has, her own mind, her own, personality. It's, her life, even though it's as tragic as it is, but now she's rebuilding it again. And so, I'm just going back to our Justice for Madelyne episode that we did years ago.
I
Um,
can't believe it's been years.
I,
That's
I,
so
I
wild to
know.
me.
I know, but but that scene, I just took it as an echo, because that's how Madelyne felt, and that she just never, even at the end, the last, I think it was it issue 4 of Hellions. She even says to Havoc as she was dying, "I just wanted everyone to know I was a real girl,"
And
and I think she always had that doubt in her mind that she wasn't, but we all know she is.
well, I'm reading some issues of rereading some issues of X-Men, and it's when Strife comes in around like the 40s or 50s of the series, the issues, and the idea that these clones aren't real was something that was really big back then. I didn't
Mhm.
understand it until now, because again, I had always kind of seen them as their own. But I think this is why a character like Madelyne, why there's so much passion with Madelyne, with Jean, because I think the conversations we're having right now about what constitutes a real person, a soul, we're getting into like questions of, spirituality. And I think Madelyne is a wonderful conduit for that. And I'm always so shocked when people from Marvel are like, "Oh, I didn't know Madelyne was so popular." I'm like, "Have you ever been on a message board?
Right,
Like,
exactly. Oh
have
my
you not
God,
seen
she's like
these
one of the most
debates?"
beloved characters.
I know. I'll never forget when someone was like, "Oh, I didn't know she wasn't that popular until we killed her off in Hellions," and I was like, "No,
What?
she's always been popular. I don't know where you're going with it. She may not have been handled well, but she certainly has a very vocal, passionate fan base."
Oh yeah, and I think it's just because you feel such empathy for her character, because her situation was just such a shitty one. It was beyond her control, and how could you not be upset and get angry about that? I mean, how would you feel?
Well, she's justified. She's
Right,
justified in her anger. We know. I
of
agree with
course.
you. In today's world, we've had 30 years of Madelyne Pryor being angry at Cyclops and Jean. It's time to move her past this story. But
Mhm.
the story, she is 100% in the right to be
Oh,
angry
absolutely.
and justified.
I mean, it's just Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, kind of put yourself in, their shoes for a minute. How would you feel if you woke up one day and discovered that you're a clone of somebody else and that you were only created for a specific purpose? And then once that purpose was made, they tried to take you out because
Yeah,
you're not worth anything anymore. You're just nothing but a Xerox copy to them, and that needs to be put into the shredder.
yeah,
It's just
boils
such
my
a
blood.
such an inhuman thing to do to somebody, and that's why, and I hate it, and I always call out Krakoa's hypocrisy here about at the time when they were against resurrecting clones, and considering them, well, we can't have two of the same person here. Well, but it's like they're not really. They're identical, yes, genetically, but personality wise, they're not the same, and that's why I always and I loved so much when Jean says, "That's why I always push the council that's why I push them to resurrect you." I even loved it when Emma even said it to Havoc, that she went to them and said, "Hey, bring her back," and which I actually want to see more. I want to see a Madelyne and Emma, kind of a,
Yes. We've never really got it.
we've never seen them interact with each other.
I think we only got it during very briefly during that utopian fraction era
Mm,
when we did Sisterhood, and it was not
Not
even
not
significant.
well, not even really that. I mean, that cover that was where you see like them with their hands on each other, but you never really had them interact at all. I mean, because I mean, what was it? That story was just kind of it was kind of out there a little bit. I mean, I was glad to see Madelyne, come back. I was just pissed off that she didn't stick around afterwards. But it's like, okay, you bring her back for this many issues, and then okay, we're
But
done with her.
but then that story has never made sense to me because
Yeah,
why would Madeline know that Wolverine has a locket of Jean's hair,
right,
but wouldn't know that
exactly.
Jean is buried in the mansion? Like,
That she was
girl,
even
it's called
dead.
findagrave.com. You know what I mean? Like, and then Jean comes to Emma and breaks her psychic hold, and that's never really addressed again. It just and
No.
why is why is Maddie as a evil spirit, why when she goes into Jean's body, why is she worse off than she was before? It never made any sense to me. Like, why wouldn't she be like, oh, this isn't Jean Grey, whoops, hopping out of that body and
Oh,
recorporealizing myself?
yeah,
Doesn't make any
exactly. I
sense.
mean, if they swapped it with just like a regular, random redheaded human's
Yeah,
body, I mean, yeah, as powerful as she is, she couldn't just extract herself out of it and
yeah.
be like, okay, nice try.
Nice try,
Um,
haha.
but you meddling kids, and I would have gotten away with it too.
Yeah, and just
You
go, ha
know,
ha ha, I'll be back, and like go off into the
right?
night.
Exactly. So that was just kind of, I don't know. I never really got that.
But
Um,
okay, I see what you're saying for being focused on this issue. I see
yeah,
what you're saying that this is more of who she was back then, echoing
right.
that. But again, I guess in my head canon, I sort of saw this as like our Madeline, because our Madeline, like present tense Madeline, because her soul is part of Jean. But that would make sense that our Madeline's still alive, if that makes. But again, it's all wonderful conversation. I do like the ending where Jean is holding the Phoenix and she's here like,
Hmm.
whatever happens, we're going to do this together. So
Yeah.
we're led to assume that Jean and the Phoenix are now rebonded. And I guess that was the purpose of the series, to show that Jean and the Phoenix are officially being rebonded following the events of Phoenix Resurrection, where she had sent the
Hmm.
Phoenix away.
I think it's one of those moments where it's kind of like, well, maybe this breakup really wasn't in the best interest for us both, and now it's time to get us back together again. I mean, I understand the reasoning why they wanted to separate, uh, the Phoenix aspect of Jean from her in Resurrection, because they wanted her to kind of stand on her own, and stand on her own. She did. I mean, she helmed her own X-Men team, and I mean, and then if you really think about it, I mean, she's really the one that came up with the idea of wanting to form this mutant
Yeah,
nation prior to
agreed.
Krakoa's happening. But I think at the same time, it's just one of those things where it's one doesn't work without the other. And I mean, they're so intertwined with each other. Very just kind of this yin yang, focus. Jean is not complete without the Phoenix, and the Phoenix is not complete without Jean. Now, I attribute their kind of relationship to, and not trying to get too deep into this here, and but to like in the Hindu religion, where after death the soul leaves the body and it gets recycled until it goes back into its truest form. And that's how I kind of see with, because in the previous issue, Jean says, I accepted the Phoenix, I let the Phoenix take me, and I sent the power to others. And how I attribute to that is, in that kind of religion, is the Phoenix having gone to Madelyne and brought her life, having gone to Rachel, the Phoenix Five, Echo, to play on to what you said about how they're she's exercising her will through them, so to speak. But eventually it always comes back to her somehow.
Yeah.
It's true self, it's heart.
Yeah. No, I mean, you just framed it for me. Where did Moira stab her? In the heart, the white hot room, the
Yeah.
heart. It's broken. And I like the idea. And this was something that was also in Here Comes Tomorrow and End Song, which is like Jean and the Phoenix are so tightly bonded that the Phoenix is even manifesting itself in Jean's genetics. That's how the beast Sublime was able to clone Phoenix traits into himself. And in Phoenix Song, Jean outwardly says, because you and I are one. And the Phoenix is like, well, this longing I have is here. So whether Jean is accepting that part of her or not, it's always present there. So even if we haven't seen the Phoenix come to Jean in the present tense, her being stabbed through the heart, the Phoenix is also dead because they are one and the same. It's I like that idea quite a bit. And I want to say, because, you know, I've been hard on the series, I think Louise Simonson does have a point of view. I think she can write a really great Jean. I was a little scared that, you know, we have a writer who was very great at shaping Jean in the 80s, but sort of coming back like 30 years later. Can they really still write the character in a great way? She can. She can. I'm sorry to Claremont. Anytime I get a modern Claremont book, I'm like, oh, but she has nailed it. And Jean's voice here is fully realized. I wish someone on the editorial team would have given her more of an active story, as not so much a passive story. I wish they would have said, like, this is a great concept, but let's not put Jean in what if scenarios. Let's tell like an actual story here, because I think she can write a good action-paced story with Jean at the center of it. And I'm curious if Louise Simonson will be returning. I don't know.
That, I mean, I'd be all for it. I mean, I think she is a phenomenal writer, and I can understand that. Yeah, I mean, she wrote such a beautiful Jean Grey during her X Factor years. I mean, that was really one of Jean's highlights of, you know, her return back then when she came back. And I can understand that. I mean, yeah, she was playing catch up a little bit, and I kind of, you know, hope too that somebody in editorial would kind of, kind of be that little bug in her ear and be like, okay, this is what happened. This is what's been going on with her, you know, this and that, and during this time. But at the same time too, I mean, Jean was considered, you know, dead from what, 2004 to 2018.
Like
So
I
I mean,
think
at least she
17 is. We're such nerds. Wait, but I think it was December 17th when Phoenix Resurrection 1 came out.
Exactly. But she didn't really come back until like what, January of that 2018, and then February is when she went to X-Men Red. I know. It's like,
I love it.
Catalog in her own, you know, brains here. I mean, so she kind of had a bit of that, you know, time to where, you know, Jean, I mean, she still had a presence, but I mean, she wasn't physically, you know, around then, unfortunately.
Well, they had Jean in present, Age of Apocalypse Jean, Teen Jean, was Hope Jean. You had three scenarios where Jean was always around in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, and kind of speaking of Hope, though, I mean, it's just, I still think there's just that connection right there between them, because it's just, and you're right, yeah, editorially, Hope was supposed to have been Jean Reborn. And I mean, I've got my differences, you know, different opinions, and I'm 50-50 with AVX. I don't think it was a terrible story, but I don't think it was like the best one either. But that would have been such a perfect vessel for Jean to have come back, especially that very end.
Well, Second Coming. Do you remember that scene where she bursts into the Phoenix, and then Hope looks at Cyclops. Cyclops looks at her. Emma and Wolverine go running, and Wolverine's like, "No, Emma, this is our fight now." And Emma bows her head and says, "I know." That is, for me, that's beautiful.
Yes, and it's fun, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's kind of how this happens in this book. Because what if Jean from the White Hat Room, she obviously understands who Hope is and what her power set is. What if she, from there, reached out to her then and said, "Here, let me pass on my
Perfect.
ability to you for
Perfect.
this.
I love that
Yeah,
interpretation. Yes. And by
yeah,
the way, for the family at home, Hope has a major play in, or a major moment in this issue where she turns into what, like a warrior phoenix? What's it
yeah,
called? But
yeah.
she looks
She
so badass. I have to tell you, I was never a big Hope Summers fan. I used to call her Baby Spalding. I am
I wasn't either,
in the Krakoan
honestly.
age. I like her so much. I think they're doing
Yeah.
such a wonderful job with Baby Spalding in the Krakoan age. But yeah, I guess this is going to be picked up in Immortal X-Men. But Jean touches Hope, and Hope becomes a Hope Wings of Fire. Phoenix Fire blinding. I love this. And she looks like an archangel. And maybe that's what Hope is, an
Exactly.
archangel for the Phoenix. If you think of Phoenix as like a deity, as a god, Hope
Hmm.
is the archangel, and I love it. Love it.
I
I mean,
mean,
she's even got the flaming sword.
right. And I think even Apocalypse in a previous issue had mentioned something about a fiery sword. I can't remember exactly where. I think it was
Oh,
in
I
an
missed
X-Men
that
Red
part.
issue.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah, you've got Exodus right there. So I mean, there's obviously religious kind of talk right there. No, I mean, I love that scene too. I mean, you see Jean, kind of passing on her, power to herself, and then allowing Hope to mimic. Which then you can clarify right there. That's this embodiment of Jean that's kind of in this kind of delirium type state. Because when Hope went to or when Hope and Exodus saw Jean kind of out there in this kind of state, she even says, she's delirious. um, but now you see that, and I think this is going to be the body that Jean is going to be reborn from, and now Jean has kind of passed the Phoenix to herself, that allows
Mhm.
Hope to mimic, that ability now, and we'll see what happens in the next issue of Immortal X-Men that comes out next week. But it's going to be another Jean centric issue, because I mean, she's featured on the cover and other versions of her in the background. I mean, you even see like the ultimate version of her, in the bottom corner.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah, I mean,
am
it's just
First of all, so I love this idea that Jean, even in the White Hot Room during the Messiah era, was the one reaching out to Hope, and Hope was able to mimic her powers to the Phoenix, and that's why
oh,
Hope
yeah.
has that. I have to tell you, I think I was talking to you about this. The first read I had of this issue, I loved it. The second read, I hated it. The third read, I was okay with it. This conversation with you, I'm like, okay, there was a lot planted here.
Mhm.
Not a lot of answers, but certainly a little bit more pieces to the larger Phoenix mysteries, the divine Phoenix mysteries. So I could be happy with it, but I think this, and I said this with Judgment Day, the Phoenix Spotlight. I'm done with them regurgitating plot points we already know with Gina and the Phoenix. I just want the story to be propelled forward. It's kind of hard
Yeah.
because we are readers of the Morrison Phoenix Endsong era, where we got the Phoenix mythos very much evolved. And this is sort of going back a little bit, or it's not even just going back. It's just not taking the story anywhere new, or we're not getting answers to what we got before. But I think this on its own merit is really good. I think this issue is good. I just want the next series to really focus on what this means with Gina and Phoenix. I want them to tackle Gina in the White Hot Room during those years she was dead. I want to tackle Jean pushing Scott to be with Emma. That to me is such a huge plot point. And I remember
Mhm.
during ABX, we were all like, "Oh, Phoenix is with Scott and Emma. They're going to have access to the higher Phoenix consciousness, and they're going to know that Jean." I think that drama writes itself, though. And that would be a
Yeah.
wonderful
No.
thing to have, like Scott and Emma look at each other and be like, "Are we only together because Jean willed it so?" And Cyclops could look at Emma and be like, "No, whether she did or not, I love you." You know what I mean? Like these are powerful stories that you
Right.
could tell. You don't have to ignore it. Embrace it.
It is quite frustrating to see these missed opportunities that like people like us, these fans that can come up with. And I mean, look, I'm not one to sit there and say, "Oh, I can come up with a better story." I mean, they're not the ones paying me here, but I mean, hey, but you have these great ideas, and I completely agree. I try to not do this, but and
Do it.
I know
Do it.
that
Do it.
you
Where was
you
the
got your
locket? Mike, where was the locket? Where's the locket? Cyclops gave them the locket. Where is it?
gave the Hope, yeah, the picture of him and Jean in it,
Yeah. Where is it?
and
Let loose. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing. Does Hope still have it? I mean, we've not seen it since she came back,
She lost
but you
it.
knew there was always this. But you always knew there was this underlining connection because even when Cable and Hope returned, and Hope find to the destroyed X Mansion for like the 50th millionth time that is blown up or whatever, but she finds a picture of the original X-Men, the X-Men, and if you notice, I mean, her hand is like right over Jean's
Yeah.
image, and you feel like she's kind of looking at her, so to speak. But when it comes to Scott and Emma, I mean, I know, I mean, you're a shipper of them, and there's so many, and that's fine. I mean, me, I think we need to see. I would love to see Jean kind of go solo and whatnot, but
Oh,
I
I
always
agree.
kind of, but I always put it out there. I said, when you think about it, they're only together because Jean made it so.
Yeah.
She pushed them together. Another, sacrifice of her to continue the school to make sure everybody has a good life. She sacrificed her love, her greatest love
But that's why I
to,
love it. That's why I love them
yeah.
together. That's why I don't understand when Gene fans are so against Scott and Emma. Of course I get it, but it was because Jean put aside her own emotions and was
Yeah.
able to ascend into godhood and was able to push them together. That was Jean saying, I'm the bigger person here. I know what
Hmm.
needs to be done. And like you said, there's one word to epitomize Jean as a character: sacrifice. She's always sacrificing herself for the betterment of others.
Yep.
And I just think that was a beautiful scene. And we can write that. That is going to be our next episode, talking about Scott, Emma, Jean, and everything.
No. No, I mean, because yeah, I think about it. I mean, no, I 100% agree. I mean, she's always put her family, her friends, before
Mhm.
herself, always being the one to sacrifice her life so that they can see another day. And that's one of the things that I love about her and really, really respect her as a character is that she's willing to do that. I know people, rag on her about her dying all the time, but when her dying is because she's dying for them. It's just not, there's a bigger picture here. I mean, she could have easily brought herself back at the end of Here Comes Tomorrow.
Yeah, she could have
Um,
reinserted herself into the
but she,
timeline, but she had
but she
something
didn't.
new to do.
There was a bigger mission that she had to go and complete, which to find the pieces that were shattered from her death, and in doing so, to keep the school going and to make sure no one has that horrible future. She mentally pushed Scott to accept Emma's offer and then for them to be in a relationship. And yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Scott and Emma shipper, but I respect it and I get it, and I don't hate it, and that's why I just wish that fans can just you can love these two characters. You don't have to hate one character just to build up another. I
Oh,
mean,
I hate that. I like pizza and I love hamburgers. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You can love things for very different reasons.
right.
And I also think that, like, again, with Emma and Jean, I think it's fun. I do want to say I think it's fun that they have some kind of rivalry. And again, on the surface, you may see Emma a certain way and Jean the other, but there's a lot going on underneath. I just think that Jean was a bigger person at the end of Here Comes Tomorrow. She
Hmm.
had godhood awaiting her. And I
Right.
believe Morrison wanted to establish the Green Lantern Corps, but for phoenixes, and that's why we got
Right.
that. So Jean was supposed to be that was supposed to be a larger story that Marvel
Hmm.
could have taken with them, and they could have like the Phoenix Police, the Green Lanterns of the Marvel universe, but they never followed through with it. So, Scott and Emma together, that's why I like them. Because again, it was born out of a very of sacrifice. And I think there is a lot in Morrison's New X-Men where I was sold on that relationship. But that could be, you know what? I think we're going to have you back on again so we can talk
Okay.
about Scott and Emma. But so final thoughts on this issue. Final thoughts.
I'll give it definitely like an 8 out of 10. I think it was a very beautiful issue.
Agreed.
I mean, of course, I'm like I said before, I'm very biased when it comes to Jean Grey. So I mean, anything that she's prominently featured in, I'm like just all in 100%. And it just intrigues me more. And I like, I gotta be honest, I like that we don't see her return, so to speak, at the end of this. Like I'm sure a lot of people probably expected that she was just gonna
Mhm.
resurrect and return to the land of the living again. At least I like that they're kind of savoring that, for now until the overall major narrative of the Fall of X storyline, which I think for me is going to keep. I mean, I obviously an avid reader, but it keeps me intrigued, and I just can't wait to see how Immortal X-Men now tackles the end of this, and what do they do with that, especially with how the next issue is described, specifically with Jean. So no, I mean, I loved it. Is it perfect? No, but I mean, it's overall, I get it, and I enjoyed it. So
That's kind of son. Where can the folks at home hit you up? Where can they buy your art? Where can they listen to your podcast? Give all the plugs.
oh gosh, okay. Well,
You're a busy man.
well, I had to say, so right now I don't have my t-shirt site up anymore. I had to take that down. I'm revamping. I'm working to revamp it. I don't know when I'm gonna. I That's another story right there. But Instagram wise, you can find me at mdbrower81. I do have a podcast now with a co-host of mine, Booker, Talk and Vibe. You can find us on Spotify and Apple, and you can find us there, Talk and Vibe podcast. We've been going on now since June 12th, and we hit 11th episodes. We're still going. Check us out. Support us, and Twitter. Well, I still call it Twitter. I know it's X now, like whatever
it's called.
Mike Brower 81. That's where you can find me.
Cool. And Familia, what were your thoughts on issue 4 of Jean Grey? If you're watching this on YouTube, leave them in the comments below. DM us and let us know your feels. And we'll see you guys next time.
Tell us.